I hear that all the time, that God's will knows what's right for you, what's the plan for you. And we've talked about God's plan. I'm not going to go into that. I want to talk about God's will. So I want to go and talk about that the nature of God, the nature of the infinite, is not one of limitation and bondage. It's not one of destiny or kismet. It's one of freedom. Really, really get that anchored in your mind, that if there is this infinite nature, there is no boundaries within it. There's no lack. It's infinite. So its nature then must be one of freedom, because it cannot know limitation, because to know limitation would actually mean it is not infinite. And then when you take that idea that the one, the infinite, is there, Ernest Holmes said this. He says, our divine inheritance is self-sufficiency, perfection, peace, wholeness, and it must include self-expression and accomplishment. Think about that. We are a microcosm of the macrocosm. As a microcosm of the macrocosm, it is our inheritance, it is our nature that everything we need is within us. And that because we're created out of the infinite, we're already perfect. And when we see that perfection, we have peace, wholeness. And because we are the infinite, we're also creators. And as creators, there's self-expression. And in self-expression comes accomplishment. So it's our natural birthright. He goes on and he says, the nature of God is wholeness. It is infinite. It's all there is. Therefore, the will of God, which can never, ever be divorced from God's nature, is wholeness. Think about that. The nature of God is wholeness. You and I are microcosms of it. God can never be separated from itself. Therefore, because God's nature is wholeness, our nature is wholeness. But we forget. Our ego and our bodies and our attachment and our identification with our egos and our bodies takes us out of the realization of our own truth. You see, if God is freedom, which it must be because there's nothing other than God, then all bondage that a person might experience in our human form is simply the result of a faulty and limited point of view. It doesn't get any easier to understand than that. If God is freedom, and that's what it is, then the bondage you and I are experiencing is our ego. We've created false beliefs that we've been domesticated into by our parents, by the churches, by society, by advertising. We have the ability to be anything we choose, to create whatever we choose in our human form and have an unlimited experience. Whatever a person believes about God influences the experience of their entire life. If you believe that God is a judging God, that'll have a dramatic impact on your life experience. You will always subordinate yourself to God. You'll always subordinate yourself to others. But if you have a belief that God is whole, and because God is whole, and you're an expression of God that you're whole, you will not subordinate yourself. I know that the power to create is responding to me. I don't ask and beseech something outside of me to create. I use the power as the microcosm of the macrocosm. And when you understand the infinite nature, you understand that you being a microcosm of the macrocosm, that the will of God, its will for you, which is its will for itself, is always for more life. It is never about limitation. It's impossible for God to even know what limitation is. So God's will, which is your actual inherent nature, is always for a more expansive, unlimited life. And you've been given the power to use to create that. You've been given the mind. You've been given an imagination. But how many times have we forgotten that we can imagine? I'll give you a simple example. The other day, I was having a conversation with my one aunt that's still alive. And the doctor gave her medication for something she was dealing with. And she was saying to me, she says, I was having this negative effect, but without the medication, I have this other effect. And I said to her, I said, Auntie, why not just take half the medication and see what it does? And she goes, whoa, I hadn't thought about that. We've been domesticated to not imagine something different. I wasn't imagining anything new. I was saying, well, wait, if the medication's giving you a side effect, what if you cut down the dosage? We have minds that are powerful. And the key thing to understand is there is nothing in the universe which opposes our good except our misuse of the law, which is itself is good. So let me define good. Good doesn't mean right or wrong. Good is what are you directing your thought at? When it says opposes your good, it opposes what you want. There's nothing that opposes what you want. The law always responds to the nature of your belief. The law always gives you what you believe. What you believe is what we consider as good. It's your belief. Now here's the key thing. Is it a conscious belief? Or is it an unconscious belief that you didn't even know you had, that was blindly accepted into you when you were young, that you've been domesticated into, brainwashed into by society, by the advertising going on? Oh my God, the advertising out there, 75% of all advertising dollars in the United States are spent by drug companies. Do you think maybe you're being influenced by that? Not unless you live in a cave. It goes on when Ernest says the law, by its very nature, must present itself to each individual according to their belief. This creative power, the God creative power, simply responds to our belief. That's its nature, to respond to our belief. It doesn't judge us. It doesn't think what's better for us, what's worse for us, any of that. It simply gives you and I what we believe. Want to know what you believe? Look at your life. Your life reflects your beliefs. There is no sin. It's just a mistake. There is no punishment. There's just a consequence. So you can have a faulty belief. It's just a mistake. It's not a belief that you've chosen. But that belief will get you a consequence. Change your belief, and you'll have a different consequence. But there is no power that's going to punish you for doing anything. You're not being punished. You have a belief. There's a natural outpicturing, a natural consequence to that belief. It's pretty simple. But we've been taught to fear. God's will and God's nature are one and the same thing. God's nature is wholeness, therefore its will is wholeness. We, you and I, have been given the freedom to discover this for ourselves. And this is our life quest. You see, we are microcosms of the macrocosms, and we're on an eternal journey to unfold, discover, reveal, and experience the infinite nature that we are always connected with. Isn't that just a marvelous thing? So today, realize you are already whole. You just have to open yourself to the possibility. And test the law. Build a new belief. See how it demonstrates for yourself. Don't ever believe a word I say. See how it demonstrates for you. You are a perfect expression of the infinite. You're unique, whole, worthy, and powerful. Go ahead, prove it to be true. I want to ask you today to do me a favor. In the comments section, whenever you're watching this, tell me what you got out of this. Tell me one single point that you got out of this that startled you, that you disagreed with, that gave you clarity, or maybe there's something that came out of this that you're grateful for. I would love for you to write that comment because that helps me as I bring my next message to you. With that, have a blessed and a joyfully creative